Hey, what's up guys? This is Joe from Excel by Joe. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we can use correlation in order to improve our projections or simulations to get more accurate results. What I'm going to do in this video is kind of to show how teammates can correlate to each other, and that will affect their fantasy output. So we'll get one player to get a fantasy score, and then everyone else is going to kind of correlate to that player. So let's get into that in 1 second. Just if you like this video, if you want to see more like this, be sure to smash the thumbs up, like the video, and please subscribe to the channel so you can see more like this. And also just check down below for all the links of my courses and tools for to help you with spreadsheets for your daily fantasy game. So let's get right into the video. What I'm going to do here is we're going to run simulations for the LA Clippers, just for 3 players. Kawhi Leonard, Batum, and Luke Kennard. So what I've got here is the game logs from this year for 2021. And let's sort them, and let's just pull out those couple players. So let's get the Clippers here. And I only want to look at just these 3 players for now. And let's see. There we go. So we've got the 3 players, and I'm going to copy this into a new sheet. And I want to get up through the fantasy points. So I'm going to copy it. We got a new sheet right here. I'm going to paste it in. And let's just get rid of the stuff we don't really need. All I want to have is the date, the FanDuel points, and the player's name. So let's delete this. All right. So now we have our players for all the games, for the game logs. What we want to do is set up a little matrix here to kind of compile it, and where we can calculate the correlation. I'm going to copy these names here. We'll just paste them over here. Do paste special, transpose, so then it'll paste the names across. Now let's get the individual dates set. So we got the dates pasted here, and I want to go to data, and over here remove duplicates. And my data has headers, date, and OK. And now see, these are all the unique dates from this field. So I'm going to put these together, and we got a matrix here. Now what I want to do is I just want to put the player score, like here. Leonard scored 41 on February 19th. I want to get all these scores in here, so then we can run a little correlation on them. So let's do that. So to do that, I'm going to use Sumifs Formula. That's just going to sum them up, but when there's only one number, it's just going to sum up the one number. So the sum range is this. It's the FanDuel points. Criteria range 1 is we're looking at the names, and we want Kawhi Leonard, which is cell H1. And range 2 is the date, and we want G2. And there we go. See, Leonard scored 41 on this date. Now what we need to do is put anchors in here. Anchors are just $signs to make sure when I copy it over, this stuff is always looking, because we always want FanDuel points to be column D. Now H1, we always want it to stay in row 1, but when we copy it over, we want it to go from H to I to J, so we're not going to put an anchor in front of the H. And we put anchors in front of the C. And then we put a $sign here in front of the G, because we always want it to look at G, but it's okay if it changes the number, so we can look at the different date. So I press enter. Now I can copy it across, and then copy it down. And there we go. So we have all the game scores by date. And we've got them all here ready to go. And now we can figure out what our correlation is. I'm going to put a filter on here, and we want to correlate them both to Leonard. We want to see how they do against Leonard's numbers. So first, let's get rid of his zeros. So we're only going to look at these games. And let's look at Batum first, get rid of his zeros. Because if he didn't play, you can't. It's not really fair to do a correlation on that game. So now I'm going to press Control-C to copy. And then I'm going to go to this tab over here. I'll just call this corral for the correlations. Now we'll go back here. Let's get rid of Batum. And let's only look at Luke Kennard. So let's get rid of his zeros. And we're going to copy his scores. We don't care really about the dates. It's not going to make a difference. As long as they lined up to the right date. See, like on February 3rd, as long as we have those lining up, it's perfect then. So we got Luke Kennard. I'm going to copy him over. So now we've got Leonard against Batum and Leonard against Kennard. We're going to do the formula equals corral. Parentheses, what's array 1 is column A, and array 2 is column B. And look, we got 0.34. Let me just format that. Now, let's do the same thing for these guys. So column F and column G. Now we press enter. And we got, look, minus 0.39. So how correlation works, correlation will look at two sets of variables or more than two sets of numbers, and it's going to give you a correlation between them. It goes anywhere between a -1 and a +1. A -1 means they're opposite correlated. Like when one player has a great game, the other player has a bad game. A +1 means when one player has a great game, the other player has a great game. And same if they have a bad game, then the other player should have a bad game. And if you get a 0, that means there's no rhyme or reason on the scoring. Sometimes they have great games, another one has bad. Sometimes they have great, another one has great. It's all over the place. And then there's just a wide range in between. So it's very rare you're going to get exactly a -1 or a +1, but there's tons of ranges in between here. And if we look at them here, Nicholas Batum is a 0.34, which is a pretty good positive rank rating, which shows that when Leonard does good, Batum does good. However, Luke Kennard has a negative rating here. So when Leonard does good, Luke Kennard does bad, and vice versa. When we run, if we were just going to run pure projections, we can run Leonard or simulations. Run Leonard simulations. Then we got Batum simulations and Kennard simulations. There's no correlation in between them. So when Leonard has a good game, Batum, who knows, could have a good game, could have a bad game. You wouldn't expect to see much of correlation in between them. When you're just doing a bulk simulations, like you want 1,000 simulations of each player individually, that's perfectly fine. But when you wanted to run just, like, say, by a game, like if you want to maybe run it to play a single game slate or just a small slate and you want to run these simulations for a couple games, then you want to have a correlation. So let's get into that. However, one thing I do want to show you is this website I found, which is really cool. I'll put a link down below in the description. It's shrstats.com. They have all of these correlations already calculated, and it looks like they keep it up to date throughout the year. So you can pull up a team. Say you want to pull the Lakers up, and say LeBron James. They have correlations for minutes, DraftKings points, and FanDuel points. So you can see LeBron James and Anthony Davis have a 0.921 for correlation for minutes. So pretty much when James plays a lot of minutes, so will Anthony Davis. But if you look at their scoring is not too correlated. It's pretty much all over the place. They're both close to 1 or close to 0, so that means there's not much of a correlation in scoring. However, if we click on this, LeBron James and Wesley Matthews, they have a really good correlation with scoring. So when James does good, Matthews should do good. And it's the opposite here with Dennis Schroeder, because he's got a negative correlation. These aren't real high numbers, but they're high enough to cause a statistical difference. So I'm going to put this link to the site. It's very cool, and I would check it out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is manually check these to see if these correlations look good to the eye test. So before we do that, we're going to unfilter this, and we need to put in a couple of variables here. So first we need to check, I'm going to paste these in, we got to get their average, because we got to see if how they're doing compared to their average. And then we want to see, we're going to put in another variable on if they had a good game or bad game. So this is just to manually check it. You don't have to do this normally. So here, so we're going to do average if. So the average, the range is here. The criteria is this name. And the average range is FanDuel points. Press enter. And he averages 44 points a game. Let's put a $sign in front of the 1. So then when we copy it down, oh, actually we need to anchor these also, because it's changing what it's looking at when you copy it over. So we have to anchor almost the whole thing. There. Now these are our averages. I'm going to copy this down by double clicking. So here is what their average points are per game. Now let's check, let's see, do they have a good game or do they have a bad game? So we go if their score was greater than their average, then we'll put Y for yes, that was a good game. Otherwise we'll put no. So now we can copy this across, copy it down. So all the no's are saying they had a bad game, which you can tell. See, 41 is less than 44, 7 is less than 21, 0 obviously is less than 14. So now we're going to put a filter on here. And we're manually going to check Leonard against Batum. Remember, we saw that they have a positive correlation of 0.34. So we should see some correlation in our scores here. So we have, let me count this up, 23 instances, 23 games where they played together. And let's see. So let's check the yeses first. When Leonard had a good game, Batum had a good game 10 times. When Leonard had a bad game, Batum had a bad game 16 times. So that's 16 out of 23 times they correlated positively together. So let's figure that out. Equals 16 divided by 23. 69, that's about 70% of the time they have a positive correlation. And you don't even know, sometimes they could have just a slightly positive correlation or a very great positive correlation, like they both had huge games. But that would be reflected in your correlation number. This would end up being a little higher. But 70% is a pretty good indicator that they have a lot in common with scoring. Now let's check the other guys. So we got Kawhi Leonard. Get rid of his 0 games. Luke Kennard. Get rid of his 0 games. So they have also 23 games. When Leonard has a good game, it's a yes. When does Kennard have? How often does Kennard have a good game? Only 4 times. And when Leonard has a bad game, Kennard has a bad game. Looks like 6 times. So if we figure that out, that's 10 times out of, we said, 23 instances. So if we do 10 divided by 23, it's only 43% of the time. So you can kind of see that there is definitely a correlation here between these players and how they do on like with their fantasy output for a game. If you can kind of harness all these correlations, when you have a projection of one player, you can kind of see how the other players will fit in. So this is great for if you're running like a showdown slate or maybe just a 2-game slate, running these simulations. So now that we tested it out. We know where the correlations are. Let's go a little bit further and build some simulations and see how we can correlate them together. Okay, so now before we set up our simulations, we just need to get our a quick little chart together of all our important information. So we need to get a chart of the players with their average. Now I'm just going to use their average. You can just, I mean, for running our simulations, you can use their projection or your adjusted score, whatever you wanted to use. Okay, we've got our average here. We want to find our correlation, which we got on the last tab. So with Kawhi Leonard, he can't correlate against himself, obviously. So with Batum, it's 0.34. And with Luke Kennard, it's minus 0.39. And last, we want to get our standard deviation. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the standard deviation now because I've got other videos on it. I'll put a link right on the video here if you wanted to check it out. But I'm just going to write quickly the formula for it, which the standard deviation is just a variance of scoring. Some people score a wide range, some score a small range. So if A2 equals, if column A equals A2, then we want standard deviation on this. Put our end parentheses in there. Then we got to do Control Shift and Enter. And I'm going to copy this down. It takes us a second to update. We don't have to copy it all the way down because our players are right here at the top. So let's just copy these numbers over. So let's see, Leonard is a 9.6 standard deviation. And actually, Batum and Kennard are both 7.3. So Leonard is 9.6. Batum is 7.3. Kennard is 7.3. Okay, so now we have our chart and we're ready to start building our simulations. So let's build our simulations here. I'm going to paste the names, and to do our simulations, we use this formula. It's the norm INV, and the probability is still just rand, so it's going to give you a random sample. Mean is their average, which is also would be their projected scores. I don't have projected scores here. I'm just going to use their average. So it would be this cell. And the standard deviation would be this cell. So we press enter, and we did a simulation, and he scored 52 points, 52.6. So I'm going to put $signs here. We want the number to stay the same. So then when we copy it over, we can run simulations for all of them. So now Batum as a simulation, it's looking at V2, which is this number, and standard deviation, which is this number. So we got all three simulation. And then we can copy down as many simulations as we want to run. And let's just copy down, say, 100 times. There. That's roughly 100. Whatever. It's close enough. It's a lot of simulations. Now, let's check some things. So here are the numbers that we used. Now let's check our results from our simulation. So let's check the average. So we're going to formula called average, and we're just going to check Kawhi Leonard's average. Then we're going to copy it over. Let's format it in there. 44.3, 44.1, pretty close to what we'd expect. Yeah, I guess these are pretty close to what we would expect for a bunch of simulations. Now let's check the standard deviation. Equals STDEV.P for the population one. And what's the range? Just the whole column. And now when we copy this over, format it, and let's look. 9.6, 8.9. Yeah, it's close. I mean, they're never going to come exact. I mean, especially with only 100 simulations. You run 10,000 simulations, these numbers will be a lot closer. But we run it again, and see, this one's right on. So they're pretty close. So our results that we're getting are pretty much what we expected. And if we were running these independently of each other, just to kind of see how they would do, like to see their breakdown, like how many times they get over 60 or whatever, this would be exactly what we would need. And I got that other video out on that one if you wanted to check out. But we want to check the correlation, because if we are running just this one simulation right here, say this was game 1, this was game 2, or simulation 2, or so on, and we wanted to copy this all the way down, like here, Kawhi Leonard scored 56. That's way above his average. Batum scored 34, which is also above, so that looks good. And Leonard, so the first one looks like it came out correct with the correlation. But what about here? This one, Leonard scored above average, Batum scored under, and Kennard scored over. So let's kind of work going the opposite. Let's run a correlation here to see how our simulations did. So let's compare Leonard to Batum. Oh, 0.06, 0.07. Oh, it's not too much. What about this one? So we're going to compare Leonard to Kennard. Oh, 0.01. Remember, anything near 0 means there's like no correlation at all between them. See, again, right? They're all pretty close to 0, maybe 0.1. But look at these. These are on 0.3, 0.4. And we're not getting correlation anywhere near that. So, well, independently, the projections, the simulations are good. When you combine them, if you wanted to run, like, look at them across, and you can have like a full team here. This is just 3 players. Overall, they're not good. They're uncorrelated. And if you take a lineup and put it in to play a single game slate, you probably won't do that well. But what we can do, we can kind of write a formula to sort of adjust this and make our correlations closer. So the person we're looking at is Kawhi Leonard. He's the main guy. He scores the most points. So we're going to do a formula here. This will be our check. So we're going to say equals if his score is greater than his average or his simulation, then it's a good game. So we're going to put a yes. Otherwise, we'll put a no. So this is our check. And we can copy this all the way down. So now we need to adjust our formulas in order to take the correlation into effect. So Leonard is all set. We got to check if it's a yes or no. Now Batum and Kennard are both looking at their number right here, the set number, this set either average or projection. Let's insert a couple columns. And we copy their names over. And what we do, we're going to do a formula, which is basically going to say if this number is or if this is a no, that means Leonard didn't have a great game. We want to reduce this projected score here. And if it's a yes, then we want to increase the projected score. So we're going to do an if. What's the test? If this equals yes, then we're going to do a formula. And this formula is this number plus, because we're going to add to it, parentheses, the standard deviation times the correlation, and then we're going to do times 1.5. That just mean it's given to give 150% of whatever this number is, because I've tested with doing 100% of it, and it's not quite enough. It needs 150%. And then we do comma. So if it's a no, then we're going to do V2 minus the same thing, V4 times V3 times 101.5, 150%. Put the end parentheses. There, see, now you can see this is a yes. For Leonard had a good game. And now Batum's score is 25.1. We're using this as our projection now because we want him to have a higher score by a little bit. And if this is even like highly correlated, say 0.34 really is a 0.7. Say they were super correlated, all of a sudden this becomes a 29, which means that's how this formula will work to give you better correlation. So anyways, we've got this 25. We need to anchor this down here. So we're going to put dollar signs in front of all the numbers. So when we copy this down, it's still looking in this right spot here. Okay, so now we'll copy this over for Kennard. Let's actually we need to make this dollar sign here, so it's always looking at Y2, which is this cell. Copy it over, and there. See now, look. Leonard had a good game, 48 points compared to 44, so it's a yes. So Batum, his number went up to 25.1, but Kennard's number went down to 10, because remember he's negatively correlated. If we copy this down, now we got our new projected score for each of those guys all the way down. Now all we need to do is change this formula. So instead of you looking at V2, we're looking here at Z2. And the same for Kennard. Instead of looking at W2, we're looking at AA2. Let's copy this down. There. So now let's look at our results in the Sims. Again, here is our average. And look, yep, still pretty close. Numbers are still pretty close. Standard deviation, yep, looking right on just like our before. What about a correlation now? All of a sudden, 0.38 and 0.29. These numbers are now correlated. Unlike before when they weren't. You press it again, run it again. Look, 0.34 minus 0.44. We now have correlation between our simulations. And this can be done, I just did it for 3 players. It can be done for your whole team of players. So then when you start picking lineups, you can see how maybe Leonard did good. Oh, Batum did good. You might want both of them in the lineup. And it'll help you get a little more correlation when you're running just the one lineup, pretty much, for like one game. So I hope this wasn't too confusing. There's a lot of technical stuff in it. If you got any questions, let me know. I'll put a link to this spreadsheet down below so you can have it and mess around with it. And also check out all our tools, the links down below. We got a spreadsheet school. It's at spreadsheetschooldfs.com. I've got about 8 to 10 hours of videos teaching you to use spreadsheets to help you with your daily fantasy, along with my lineup building tools to build bulk lineups for single game, for the classic games, for like 12 different sports, and they're just for a one-time flat fee, no monthly fees. So that's at optimizelineups.com, and just check out everything down below. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and I guess that's it. Send me an email if you get any questions. Thanks a lot. Bye, guys.